The sound of metal snapping shut didn't belong in a room like that. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead. Champagne glasses clinked softly. 300 of the most powerful people in the city stood in silence as a police captain locked handcuffs around a black waitress in the middle of the ballroom. Alicia Brooks didn't fight. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't beg. She just stood there, back straight, eyes steady, while cold steel pressed down on the thin gold bracelet at her wrist, the only thing she owned that still felt like home. "Where did you steal it?" the captain asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. No one answered. Not the donors, not the guests, not the people who had watched her serve them all night. Some looked away, some whispered. Most just watched. Because in a room like that, power decides who belongs and who doesn't. But here's what no one noticed in that moment. Not the bracelet. Not the missed calls lighting up her phone with one simple word. Dad. And definitely not the empty seat at the front of the room, waiting for a name that hadn't been called yet. The captain thought he was in control. He thought this was just another night. He had no idea. He had just ended his career. And in a few minutes, that silence, it wouldn't protect him anymore. The sound came first. A sharp, metallic click that didn't belong in a room filled with laughter, crystal glasses, and soft piano music. It cut through the ballroom like a crack in glass, small but impossible to ignore once it happened. Alicia Brooks felt it before she fully registered it. Cold steel tightening around her wrist. For a moment, everything else seemed to fall away. The music, the conversations, the clinking of silverware against fine china. All of it blurred into a distant hum, like she had stepped underwater without moving an inch. The ballroom at the Meridian Crown Hotel stretched wide and glittering around her. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, scattering golden light across polished marble floors. Women in evening gowns moved like waves of silk. Men in tailored tuxedos stood in tight circles, voices low and confident. The kind of voices used to being listened to. And in the center of it all, Alicia stood still. Her black server uniform was pressed clean, her posture straight, her tray now abandoned on a nearby table. One cuff locked around her left wrist, the other still dangling open, catching the chandelier light like something decorative, if it weren't so final. Captain Ryan Cole stood in front of her, broad-shouldered, immaculate dress uniform, badge gleaming like it carried more authority than anyone else in the room. His grip was firm, not violent, but deliberate, controlled. The kind of grip that didn't need force to make a point. "You think I didn't notice?" he said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. A few heads turned, then more. The ripple spread. Alicia could feel it without looking. The shift in attention, the subtle tightening of the room. Conversation slowed, then thinned, then stopped entirely as the scene unfolded. "I didn't take anything," she said. Her voice was calm, not defensive, not raised, just steady. Cole let out a short breath through his nose, something between a laugh and a dismissal. "That bracelet," he said, nodding toward her wrist. "You expect me to believe that belongs to you?" Alicia glanced down. The thin gold chain circled her wrist. Delicate, almost fragile. It had been there all night, catching light with every movement. Something small and personal in a room designed to overwhelm. Her mother's bracelet. She lifted her chin slightly. "It does." Another click. The second cuff snapped shut. Now both wrists were bound. The sound echoed louder than the first. Or maybe the room had gone quiet enough for everyone to hear it. 300 people. That was what the invitation list had said. 300 of the most connected, Influential and wealthy individuals in Washington and New York gathered under one roof for the Children's Hope Foundation Gala. 300 witnesses, and not one voice cut in. A man at the nearest table adjusted his tie and looked down at his plate like it had suddenly become fascinating. A woman beside him pressed her lips together, eyes flicking toward Alicia, then away just as quickly. Further back, a couple leaned closer together, whispering. Someone raised a phone. Alicia didn't turn her head, but she saw the reflection in the polished silver serving tray nearby. A small red recording light blinking to life. Of course. People would watch. People always watched. Cole stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel more personal, even though the entire room was listening. "Where'd you get it?" he asked. Or better question, who'd you take it from? Alicia met his eyes. There was no fear there. Not the kind he expected. "I told you," she said quietly. "You're wrong." For half a second, something flickered across his face, not doubt, annoyance, the kind that came when a situation didn't unfold the way it was supposed to. When the person standing in front of you didn't shrink the way they were expected to. He straightened, turning slightly so more of the room could see him. "Security issue," he said, projecting now. "Missing jewelry reported. Standard procedure." Standard. The word settled into the room like permission. A few heads nodded. Of course. Security. Of course. Protocol. That was easier to accept than what was actually happening. Alicia felt the weight of the cuffs against her wrists. The metal pressed into the soft skin just above the bracelet, pinning it there, the gold digging slightly under the pressure. It stung. Not sharply, not enough to make her react, but enough to remind her it was real. Across them, a waiter froze mid-step, a tray of champagne glasses trembling slightly in his hands. In the reflection of a mirrored column, Alicia caught a glimpse of herself. Small, still, out of place, exactly the way they saw her. Her gaze shifted, just slightly, scanning the edges of the crowd. No one stepped forward. No one said, "Wait." No one said, "I saw her all night." No one said anything. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of choice. Cole reached for her arm again. "Let's go," he said. "On what charge?" she asked. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. A few more heads turned at that. Cole paused, just long enough for the question to hang there. Then he tightened his grip. "Suspicion," he said. "And right now, that's enough." Alicia didn't move. Not immediately. Not out of resistance. Out of control. She adjusted her stance, straightening her shoulders, aligning her posture like she was stepping into something instead of being dragged through it. The cuffs shifted slightly as she did, the bracelet pressing harder against the metal. For a brief moment, her fingers brushed the chain. A memory flickered. Warm kitchen light, her mother's laugh, the soft clink of that same bracelet against a coffee mug years ago. Then it was gone, replaced by chandeliers, marble, eyes that refused to meet hers. She lifted her head again and let Cole guide her forward. The crowd parted, not dramatically, not all at once, just enough. Like water moving around something it didn't want to touch. Alicia walked through them, past tables worth more than her yearly tuition, past people who could change policies, sign checks, shape headlines, past a room full of power, and not one person used it. Near the back, just before the service hallway, a young woman stood with her phone half raised, her expression tight, conflicted. Maya Reed, a journalist, though no one here knew that yet. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then pressed. Recording, Alicia noticed. Just barely. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Something passed between them. Not hope. Not exactly. But recognition. The hallway door swung open. The warm gold of the ballroom light gave way to the harsh white glow of fluorescent bulbs. The hum of conversation faded behind them, replaced by the distant clatter of dishes and the low rumble of kitchen equipment. Cold. Quiet. Real. Cole guided her inside. The door shut behind them with a soft, final click. And just like that, the music was gone. The crowd was gone. But the question stayed. If 300 people could watch a woman be treated like that and say nothing, what else had they chosen not to see? And more importantly, who was Alicia Brooks, really? 2 hours earlier, no one in that ballroom had been asking that question. Because 2 hours earlier, Alicia hadn't been standing under crystal light with steel around her wrists. She had been in the alley behind the Meridian Crown Hotel, the city humming low around her like a distant engine that never really stopped. The back entrance wasn't made for guests. No gold trim, no velvet ropes. Just a dented steel door with a flickering overhead light that buzzed every few seconds like it was tired of doing its job. Alicia stood there for a moment before going in. The cold air brushed against her face, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't quite fallen yet. Somewhere down the block, a bus hissed to a stop. A car horn echoed. The city moved on, unaware of what kind of night it was about to witness. She adjusted the strap of her worn canvas bag on her shoulder. Inside it, tucked neatly between a folded uniform and a pair of comfortable flats, was a thick textbook. Constitutional law. The edges of the pages were marked with sticky notes in 3 different colors. She slid her hand into the bag for a second, pressing her fingers against the spine of the book. A quiet reminder of where she was going and how far she still had to go. The door creaked open. Warm air rushed out, heavy with the scent of cooking oil, garlic, and something sweet baking in the ovens. The sound changed instantly. No more distant traffic, just voices layered over each other. The clatter of pans, the sharp rhythm of knives hitting cutting boards. "Hey, close that door!" Alicia pushed it shut behind her with her heel. The kitchen stretched wide and chaotic, stainless steel surfaces reflecting harsh fluorescent light. Steam curled up from pots, plates stacked high along one wall. Cooks moving fast in practiced patterns that looked like chaos, but weren't. Raymond Ray Carter stood near the center, arms crossed, watching everything at once. 63. Built like a man who used to play football and never really stopped being strong. His chef's coat was spotless despite the storm around him. His eyes landed on Alicia the second she walked in. "Well, look at that," he said, his voice cutting clean through the noise. "Late or just making an entrance?" Alicia smiled faintly, already tying the apron around her waist. 2 minutes early," she said. "You're welcome." Ray snorted, but there was warmth in it. Keep talking like that. I might start believing you." He stepped closer, lowering his voice just a little as he looked her over. "You good tonight?" A simple question, but not really simple. Alicia nodded once. "I'm good." Ray studied her face for a second longer than necessary. He'd known her long enough to recognize the difference between "I'm fine" and "I'm good." Tonight, she meant it. At least, she thought she did. "All right then," he said, clapping his hands once. "We're slammed. Big crowd, big money, which means big attitudes. You already know how it goes." "I always do," Alicia replied. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's what I'm worried about." He turned away, barking orders at a line cook. before Alicia could respond. She moved toward the lockers along the wall, slipping off her jacket and hanging it carefully. Her movements were efficient, practiced. Nothing wasted, nothing rushed. From the next locker over, a younger server leaned against the metal door, watching her with a grin. "Girl, you see the guest list tonight?" she said. "Half these people got buildings named after them." Alicia pulled her black uniform shirt over her shoulders, smoothing it down. "I'm here to carry trays," she said, "not red plaques." The girl laughed. "Yeah, well, some of them plaques got your last name on it too, don't they?" Alicia paused for half a second. Barely noticeable, but enough. She reached for the sleeve of her shirt, rolling it down neatly over her wrist. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said lightly. "Oh, come on," the girl pressed, lowering her voice like she was sharing something juicy. "My cousin works downtown. Says Brooks ain't just a name. Says it's money." Alicia picked up her name tag, pinning it to her chest. Alicia, just Alicia. No last name, no extra weight. "No," she said. "It's just a name." The girl raised an eyebrow. "Mm-hmm. And I'm just here for the free breadsticks." Alicia smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She turned away, grabbing her tray. "Focus," she said, "or Ray's gonna have you scrubbing pans by midnight." "Please," the girl scoffed. "I scrub faster than you carry." "We'll see." As Alicia stepped away, her phone buzzed in her bag. She felt it immediately. Didn't reach for it. Didn't need to. She already knew who it was. The vibration stopped. Then came again. Insistent this time. Alicia closed her eyes for a brief second. Then she unzipped the bag just enough to glance at the screen. One word. Dad. She stared at it. The name sat there, simple, familiar, heavier than anything else in that bag. For a moment, the noise of the kitchen faded again, just like it had in the ballroom. A different kind of silence. Not empty, full of history. Full of conversations that had ended the same way every time. "You don't have to do this on your own." "I want to." "You don't need to prove anything." "I do." The phone buzzed again. Alicia exhaled slowly, then she turned the screen off. Not declined, not answered. Just silenced. "Everything all right?" Ray called out without looking at her. Alicia slid the phone back into her bag. "Yeah," she said. "Just someone checking in." Ray glanced over his shoulder. "Better be someone important." Alicia adjusted her grip on the tray. "He is," she said. Ray didn't press. He didn't have to. Instead, he nodded once toward the double doors that led out to the ballroom. "Then go remind them who you are," he said. Alicia followed his gaze. The doors stood closed, but light spilled through the thin gap between them. Warm, golden, inviting. A completely different world waiting just on the other side. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and pushed the doors open. The change was immediate. Light, music, soft laughter, the hum of wealth that didn't need to announce itself because it already knew it was there. Alicia stepped into it like she always did. Quietly, professionally, almost invisibly. She moved through the room with practiced ease, balancing her tray, offering champagne, nodding politely when someone acknowledged her, which wasn't often. To most of them, she wasn't a person. She was part of the environment, like the tables, like the music, like the air. At one point, an older woman fumbled with her purse, nearly dropping it. Alicia was there before it hit the floor. "I've got it," she said gently, handing it back. The woman blinked at her, surprised. "Oh, thank you." Alicia smiled. "Of course." No one else noticed. They never did. Across the room, near the stage, a table sat slightly elevated from the rest. Empty. A gold placard rested at its center. Alicia's eyes passed over it without stopping. Just another detail. Just another part of the room she didn't belong to. Or so it seemed. Behind her, laughter rose from a group of men in tailored suits. "Security's tight tonight," one of them said. "Good. Last thing we need is someone slipping through who doesn't belong." Alicia kept walking. Didn't slow down, didn't turn around. But the words followed her. They always did. She adjusted the tray slightly, shifting the weight. And for just a moment, her fingers brushed against the thin gold bracelet on her wrist. A quiet, steady presence. A piece of her that didn't change depending on the room. Didn't shrink. Didn't ask permission to exist. She kept moving, unseen, unquestioned, until the moment everything would change. But for now, she was just Alicia. Just a waitress. Just a girl who came in through the back door instead of the front. And no one in that room, not one of them, had any idea who they were about to underestimate. The music floated gently through the ballroom. Soft piano layered over quiet conversation and the occasional burst of laughter. It was the kind of sound that never demanded attention, only filled the space so silence wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Alicia moved through it like she belonged to the background. A tray of champagne balanced steadily in her left hand, her right hand guiding each glass into waiting fingers without hesitation. Her steps were light, measured. She had learned long ago that in rooms like this, the less noise you made, the less likely anyone was to notice you. And sometimes, that was safer. A man in a navy tuxedo reached for a glass without looking at her. "Finally," he muttered, already turning back to his conversation before his fingers even closed around the stem. Alicia didn't respond. She didn't need to. A few steps later, another guest brushed past her shoulder. Not hard enough to cause a scene, just enough to shift her balance slightly. No apology. Not even a glance. She steadied the tray with a small adjustment of her wrist, her posture never breaking, her expression unchanged. Invisible. That was the job. At the far end of the room, a group of women stood near one of the tall windows overlooking the city. Their dresses shimmered under the chandelier light, soft colors catching gold reflections as they leaned close together. Alicia approached, offering the tray. One of them waved her off without looking. "We're fine," she said, then lowered her voice just enough to think it wouldn't carry. "Honestly, I don't know why they don't hire a more polished staff for events like this." Another woman let out a quiet laugh. "Budget cuts, maybe." They smiled at each other. Alicia stood there for half a second longer than necessary. Not frozen, not shocked, just present. Then she inclined her head slightly and stepped away. The tray still balanced, the glasses still full, her face still calm. But something inside her shifted. Not new, just familiar, like a bruise that had never quite healed. Across the room, a sudden clatter broke the rhythm. A glass hit the floor near one of the VIP tables, shattering against marble in a spray of red wine and crystal shards. Conversations paused, heads turned. A young server stood there, pale, hands shaking as she stared at the stain spreading across an expensive ivory dress. "Oh my God, I didn't mean—" The guest she'd spilled on gasped, stepping back, her expression more annoyed than angry. Alicia watched from a distance. Captain Cole stood just a few feet away from the incident. He glanced over, took it in, then shrugged. "It's fine," he said to no one in particular. "Accidents happen." He turned back to his conversation. just like that. The tension dissolved. A staff member rushed forward with towels. Another guided the embarrassed server away. The guest dabbed at her dress, already reassured by the calm around her. Within seconds, the room returned to normal. Alicia didn't move. Her eyes lingered on the scene for a moment longer. Same uniform, same job, same room, different outcome. She turned away. The tray felt heavier now. Not physically, something else. Near the edge of the ballroom, an elderly woman struggled with her purse again, the clasp refusing to cooperate. Her fingers trembled slightly, frustration creeping into her movements. Alicia stepped closer. "May I?" she asked gently. The woman looked up, surprised. "Oh, yes, thank you." Alicia took the purse carefully, adjusting the clasp with practiced ease until it clicked open. She handed it back with a small smile. "There you go." The woman blinked, then smiled in return. "Thank you, dear." Alicia nodded once. "No problem." The moment passed quietly. No applause, no attention. Just a small act of kindness that dissolved into the noise of the room. From across the floor, Maya Reed watched. Her phone was lowered now, but not forgotten. She leaned slightly against a column, her eyes following Alicia's movements with growing focus. There was something about her. Not just the way she worked, efficient, composed, but the way she held herself when no one was paying attention, or when they were paying attention for the wrong reasons. Maya had seen enough rooms like this to recognize patterns. Who was heard, who was ignored, who was questioned, and who was never questioned at all. Her gaze shifted briefly toward Captain Cole, then back to Alicia, a connection forming, not fully clear yet, but enough to make her pay attention. Alicia continued her path, weaving through tables, offering refills, collecting empty glasses. Her movements were automatic now, her mind drifting somewhere quieter, somewhere safer. Until a man stepped directly into her path. She stopped just in time, the tray tilting slightly before she corrected it. "Watch it," he said, irritation sharp in his voice. "I'm sorry," Alicia replied immediately. He looked at her for a moment. Really looked this time. His eyes moved from her face to her uniform, then down to her wrist, to the bracelet. Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of judgment, of calculation. He didn't say anything else, just shook his head and walked away. But Alicia felt it, the weight of that look, the kind that measured you without asking. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself, then kept moving. Near the stage, the empty VIP table remained untouched. Alicia passed it again, this time a little closer. The gold placard caught her eye for a fraction of a second. J. Brooks. The name meant something, but not in a way she let herself think about right now. Not here, not tonight. She kept walking. Behind her, the piano shifted into a softer piece, the notes slower, more deliberate. The room felt heavier somehow, or maybe she did. At the far end of the ballroom, Captain Cole turned again. His gaze scanned the crowd, moving with purpose now, searching. And then it landed on her. Again. This time it didn't move away. Alicia felt it before she saw it. That same tightening in the air, that same quiet shift. She didn't turn immediately, didn't give it power, but she knew. Across the room, Maya saw it too. Her fingers tightened slightly around her phone. Something was about to happen. And this time, it wouldn't be ignored. Alicia finally turned her head. Their eyes met. For a brief second, the noise of the room seemed to fade again. just like before, but this time it didn't feel distant. It felt focused, targeted, deliberate. And in that moment, Alicia understood something she had always known, but never quite said out loud. In a room like this, you weren't invisible forever. Eventually, someone decided to see you. The question was, why now? Alicia didn't move right away. Not because she didn't know what to do, but because she did. She had learned, over years of working rooms like this, that attention wasn't random. It followed patterns, it followed assumptions, and once it landed on you, it rarely let go without a reason. Across the ballroom, Captain Ryan Cole stood near the main entrance, one hand resting casually near his belt, the other holding a half-finished drink he hadn't touched in minutes. He wasn't talking anymore. He was watching. Not the crowd, not the exits. Her. Alicia lowered her gaze slightly, just enough to break the direct line between them without looking like she was avoiding it. Her fingers tightened subtly around the tray. Stay steady, stay professional, stay invisible. That was the rule. Except now, she wasn't invisible anymore. Cole leaned slightly toward the officer beside him, a younger man in a matching uniform who still carried himself like the badge meant something clean. That one, Cole said under his breath. The younger officer followed his gaze. Alicia. He hesitated. She's staff, sir, he said quietly. Catering. Cole's jaw tightened. I know what she is, he replied. Just keep your eyes on her. The younger officer didn't respond right away. Something about the tone didn't sit right, but rank had a way of silencing doubt. Yes, sir, he said finally. Across the room, Alicia stepped forward, placing 2 fresh glasses of champagne onto a table near the center. A couple thanked her without really looking at her, already turning back to their conversation. She nodded politely, moved on. Every step felt a little heavier now, not because anything had changed around her, but because something had changed in the way she was being seen. She could feel it, like a spotlight that hadn't been there before. Near the stage, the event coordinator rushed past again, clipboard clutched tight, her heels clicking fast against marble. Has anyone heard from the keynote? She muttered to no one in particular. He's never late. Her assistant shook her head. No updates. The coordinator exhaled sharply, glancing at the empty VIP table again. The gold placard gleamed under the chandelier. J. Brooks, still waiting, still untouched. Alicia passed by without slowing. Didn't look at it this time. Didn't let herself. Behind her, laughter rose from a group of donors gathered near one of the larger tables. You know what I always say? One man chuckled, swirling his drink. You can tell a lot about a place by who they let walk around in it. A few people laughed. Another voice joined in. Exactly. Standards slip, and suddenly anyone thinks they belong. Alicia kept walking. The words slid across her back like cold water. Not new, never new. But still, they landed. At the far side of the room, Ray stood just inside the kitchen doorway, watching through the narrow gap. His arms were crossed again, his eyes scanning the floor, landing on Alicia, then shifting to the officers near the entrance. He didn't like what he saw. Not the way Cole was standing. Not the way his attention stayed fixed. Ray had been around long enough to recognize that look. It wasn't about security. It was about decision. And once a man like that made up his mind, facts didn't always matter. Back on the floor, Alicia paused near a service station, setting her tray down for a moment to adjust her grip. Her hands were steady, but she pressed her palm flat against the metal surface anyway. Ground yourself. Breathe. Her phone buzzed again inside her bag. Soft, insistent. She didn't reach for it. Didn't even glance down this time. Instead, she picked up a fresh tray, stacking new glasses with careful precision. Behind her, footsteps approached. Measured, deliberate. She felt the shift before she heard the voice. "Miss." Alicia turned. Captain Cole stood directly in front of her now, close enough that she could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the controlled tension in his jaw. Up close, he looked even more certain, more convinced. "Yes, sir?" she asked. Her voice was even, polite. Cole's gaze dropped immediately to her chest. Not her face, not her eyes, her badge. He reached out without asking, taking the small plastic ID clipped to her uniform. Alicia let him, didn't step back, didn't flinch. He held it up, squinting slightly like he expected to find something wrong with it. "Alicia," he read. "No last name?" "Company policy," she said calmly. "It's on the back." He flipped it over, read it, turned it again. His thumb ran across the surface like he was testing if it was real. Around them, the nearest tables had gone quiet. Not completely, but enough. Forks slowed, voices dropped. People noticed, but they didn't intervene. They never did at this stage. They waited, watched. Cole handed the badge back, but didn't step away. "I'll be watching you," he said. Not loud, not shouted, just certain. Alicia nodded once. Of course. She picked up her tray again, stepped around him, and kept moving. Behind her, Cole didn't turn immediately. He stood there for a moment, eyes following her path across the room. The younger officer shifted beside him. "Sir," he started, then stopped. Cole didn't look at him. "Run a check," he said quietly. "Sullivan, Brooks, whatever she's going by. I want to know who she is." The younger officer hesitated. "There's no report." "Do it," Cole cut in. Silence. Then, "Yes, sir." The officer stepped away, pulling out his phone, his expression tight. Across the ballroom, Alicia moved through another cluster of guests, offering drinks, collecting empty glasses. To anyone else, she looked the same. Composed, professional, unaffected. But inside, something had shifted again. The attention hadn't passed. It had deepened, focused, turned into something more deliberate, more dangerous. Near the stage, Maya raised her phone again. Not openly, not obviously. Just enough. Her instincts told her this wasn't over. Not even close. Alicia reached the edge of the dance floor, turning slightly to head back toward the service station. And that's when she felt it again. Stronger this time. That pull in the air. That moment right before something breaks. She didn't need to look to know. Captain Cole was still watching. And whatever decision he had made earlier, he wasn't done with her yet. The only question now was how far he was willing to go. Alicia didn't have to wait long to find out. The tension followed her like a shadow that refused to break away. Every step she took across the ballroom felt measured now, watched from a distance she couldn't escape. She placed a fresh glass of champagne in front of a guest at table 4. "Thank you," the woman said absently, already turning back to her conversation. Alicia nodded, turned, and nearly walked straight into him. Captain Cole didn't raise his voice this time. Didn't need to. He stepped directly into her path, close enough that she had to stop or risk colliding with him. The movement was smooth, intentional, like he had timed it, like he had been waiting for the exact moment. "Hold on," he said. The words were quiet, but they carried. Around them, the nearby tables shifted again. Not fully silent, not yet, but close enough that people leaned just a little, listening without appearing to. Alicia adjusted her grip on the tray. "Yes, Captain?" she asked. Her tone was respectful, neutral. Cole didn't respond immediately. His eyes moved over her, slowly, deliberately. From her face, down to her uniform, to her hands. And then again, stopping at the bracelet on her wrist. That same flicker, that same judgment. "Credentials," he said. Alicia blinked once. "My badge is right here," she replied, turning slightly so he could see it clipped to her uniform. He didn't lean in, didn't look closer. Instead, he reached out again and took it, this time more forcefully. The plastic snapped lightly against the fabric as he pulled it free. Alicia kept her hands steady, didn't react. Cole held the badge up under the chandelier light, tilting it from side to side as if the angle might reveal something new. "Prestige events," he read aloud. "Temporary staff." "That's correct." "How long have you been working with them?" 2 years. "Full-time?" "No, sir, part-time." He hummed, like he was building a case out of nothing. "And tonight?" "I'm assigned to the main floor." His gaze sharpened slightly. "Assigned," he repeated. "Yes, sir." He flipped the badge over again, read it, then read it again, like repetition might uncover a flaw. Around them, the room had slowed even further. A man near the edge of the table stopped mid-sentence, his fork hovering in the air. A woman beside him leaned slightly closer, her eyes fixed on the interaction, but her face carefully neutral, watching, not helping. Cole lowered the badge just enough to meet Alicia's eyes. "You understand," he said. "We've had issues at events like this before." Alicia didn't blink. "What kind of issues?" she asked calmly. "People showing up where they don't belong." The words hung there. Not loud, not shouted, but sharp. Alicia felt the weight of them settle across her shoulders. She didn't step back, didn't raise her voice. "My credentials are valid," she said. "You can confirm with the event manager or hotel security." Cole's lips pressed into a thin line. "I didn't ask what they could confirm," he said. "I'm asking you." The difference was subtle, but clear. Alicia glanced briefly toward the nearest table. 6 people, well-dressed, well-positioned, every one of them pretending not to hear. Her gaze lingered for just a fraction of a second. No one met it. She turned back to Cole. "I'm telling you the truth," she said. There was no edge to it, no challenge, just certainty. For a moment, the two of them stood there, the space between them filled with something heavier than sound. Then Cole dropped the badge, not violently, but without care. It hit against her chest and swung slightly before settling. "I'll be watching you," he said again. The same words as before, but different now. Because now, they meant something. Alicia reached up, steadying the badge against her uniform. "Yes, sir." She stepped to the side, moved past him, didn't rush, didn't hesitate, but her pulse had changed. Just slightly. Behind her, Cole turned slowly, following her movement with his eyes. The younger officer stood a few feet away, phone still in his hand. "Sir," he said quietly. Cole didn't look at him. "What did you find?" he asked. The officer swallowed. "Nothing unusual," he admitted. "Her ID checks out. No flags." Cole's jaw tightened. "That's not what I asked." The officer hesitated. Then, "There's no report of any issue tied to her, sir." Cole finally turned. His gaze was sharp now. Cold. "Run it again," he said. "Sir, run it again." The words weren't loud, but they ended the conversation. The officer nodded reluctantly. "Yes, sir." He stepped away, his fingers moving across the screen, but his expression said everything he wasn't allowed to. Across the ballroom, Alicia set her tray down at the service station again. Her hands rested against the metal surface. This time she pressed harder. "Ground yourself. Breathe." She exhaled slowly. Once, twice, then picked the tray back up. Keep moving. That was the rule. Always keep moving. Near the stage, the event coordinator rushed past again, more frantic now. "Still nothing?" she asked her assistant. "No confirmation," the assistant replied. The coordinator glanced at the empty VIP table. J. Brooks, still empty, still waiting. She checked her watch, then her phone, then the room, as if the answer might appear if she looked hard enough. Alicia passed by them again, close enough to hear the edge in the coordinator's voice. "He's never late," she muttered. Across the floor, Maya shifted her stance, raising her phone slightly again. She wasn't just watching Alicia anymore. She was watching the pattern, the repeated attention, the unnecessary pressure, the way one person in the room had decided something and was bending everything else to fit it. Her thumb hovered near the record button. Not yet, but close. Back near the center of the room, Cole stepped forward again. Not toward the crowd, not toward the exits. Toward Alicia, again. This time there was no hesitation in his movement. No subtlety, just intent. Alicia saw him coming. Didn't turn away. Didn't pretend not to notice. She stood her ground. Tray balanced, shoulders squared, ready. The distance between them closed. The room shifted with it. People felt it now. Not just curiosity. Something heavier. Something building. Cole stopped in front of her, closer than before. "Empty your pockets," he said. The words landed harder than anything he had said so far. Not a request, not a suggestion, an order. Alicia's fingers tightened slightly around the tray. "My pockets," she repeated. "That's what I said." Her voice stayed level. "There's no reason for that." Cole leaned in just enough for only her and the closest tables to hear. "A piece of jewelry went missing," he said. "And you've been moving all over this floor." A lie, clear, simple, delivered like fact. Alicia felt it immediately. Not the accusation, the intention behind it. This wasn't about a bracelet. This wasn't about security. This was about something else. Something that had already been decided. She looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time that night, she understood. This wasn't going to stop on its own. The question was, how far would she let it go before she pushed back? Around them, the room had gone quiet again. Not fully, but enough. Enough for everyone to hear what came next. Enough for everyone to choose, again, whether they would say something or stay silent. No one did. Not at table 4, where a man with silver hair slowly set down his glass and looked at the tablecloth instead of the woman being questioned 3 feet away. Not at table 6, where a couple leaned toward each other, whispering behind polite smiles that never reached their eyes. Not even the woman who had just thanked Alicia 10 minutes ago. Her gaze dropped the moment Alicia looked in her direction. Gone. Just like that. Alicia turned back to Captain Cole. The room had made its choice. Again. "Empty your pockets," he repeated. The words sat between them, heavy and deliberate. Alicia took a breath. Not deep. Just enough. Captain, she said carefully, I haven't been near any coat check or personal belongings. You can verify that with hotel staff. I didn't ask what they could verify, Cole said. His voice didn't rise, but it hardened. I gave you an order. Alicia felt every eye around them now. Not openly staring, but present. Waiting. Watching. She lowered the tray slowly, placing it on the nearest empty table. The glasses rattled softly as they settled, the sound louder than it should have been in the silence. Then she reached into her apron pocket. One item at a time, a pen, a small notepad, edges worn from use. She placed them carefully on the white linen tablecloth. Her movements were precise, measured, controlled. No shaking, no rush. Cole watched every motion like it was evidence. Other pocket, he said. Alicia nodded once. Her fingers slid into the second pocket. She pulled out her phone. The screen lit up briefly as it moved. For a split second, just a split second, the name flashed across the glass. Dad. Then the screen went dark again. Alicia placed it on the table beside the other items. The glow faded. The moment passed, but not unnoticed. At the edge of the table, a woman in a dark blue gown saw it. Her eyes flicked from the phone to Alicia, then back again. Something shifted behind her expression. Confusion, recognition. Not complete, not yet, but something. Cole didn't see it, or didn't care. He picked up the pen first, turning it in his fingers like it might reveal a secret. Then the notepad. Then the phone. He held it longer than the others. Long enough that Alicia felt something tighten in her chest. That's my personal property, she said quietly. Cole didn't look at her. Everything here is subject to inspection, he replied. He set the phone down again. Face down this time, like it didn't matter, like nothing about it mattered. Except it did. Alicia could feel it. Not from him, from the room. From the people who had seen just enough to start asking questions in their own heads, but not enough to speak. Never enough to speak. Cole stepped back slightly, scanning the table. Pen, notepad, phone, nothing else. Nothing that could justify what he had already decided. But that didn't stop him. It never had. He looked up at her again, and this time there was no pretense. I'm going to need you to come with me, he said. Alicia didn't move. Come with you where? Service hallway, he said. We'll do a proper search there. The words hit differently now. Not public, not visible. Behind closed doors, Alicia's posture shifted just slightly. Not retreating, grounding. There's no reason for that, she said. You don't have probable cause. The phrase hung in the air like something foreign in a room built on comfort. A few heads turned more noticeably now. Legal language. Precise. Unexpected. Cole's eyes narrowed. You're refusing a direct order? He asked. Alicia met his gaze. I'm asking you to follow the law, she said. No anger, no raised voice. Just clarity. It landed harder than shouting ever could have. For a moment, just a moment, the balance shifted. Tiny, almost invisible, but real. Around them, something stirred. A man at the table shifted in his seat. A woman pressed her lips together. Someone near the back lowered their glass halfway. The room felt it. The crack. The possibility that this might not go the way it was supposed to. Cole felt it too, and he didn't like it. He stepped closer again, closing the space, reclaiming control. In this room, he said quietly, I decide what procedure looks like. There it was, not hidden, not disguised. Alicia heard it. So did the people closest to them, and still, no one spoke. At the edge of the crowd, Maya's thumb pressed firmly against her screen. Recording, this time for real. Alicia exhaled slowly. The air felt heavier now, thicker, like something had already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She looked around the room. Just once. Not pleading, not searching for help. Just seeing. Seeing who was there. Seeing who wasn't willing to stand up. Seeing what silence really looked like when it had faces. Then she looked back at Cole. "I'm not going anywhere without a reason," she said. The words were soft, but they carried, across the nearest tables, into the edges of the crowd, into the quiet. Cole didn't respond immediately. His jaw tightened. His hand moved, slowly, deliberately, toward his belt. And in that moment, the room changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Because everyone understood what was about to happen next. And no one, not one person, stepped forward to stop it. The silence didn't break. It settled. Heavy, final, chosen. Alicia saw it in their faces, the slight tightening of lips, the careful avoidance of eye contact, the subtle shifts in posture as people leaned back just enough to distance themselves from what was happening without ever leaving their seats. They weren't frozen. They were deciding, and they had decided. Captain Cole's hand closed around the metal at his belt. Slow, unhurried, certain. Alicia didn't move. Her shoulders stayed squared. Her chin stayed level. The gold bracelet on her wrist caught the light again as her fingers relaxed at her sides. One breath. Out. "Turn around," Cole said. Not loud, but absolute. Alicia held his gaze. "For what charge?" she asked. Her voice didn't shake, didn't rise, but it landed. For a brief moment, just a fraction of a second, something flickered again in the air between them. That same crack, that same possibility. Someone near the back shifted. A chair scraped faintly against marble. Then, nothing. Cole stepped closer. Close enough now that the space between them disappeared completely. "Suspicion of theft," he said, "and failure to comply." Alicia blinked once, slow, measured. "That's not probable cause," she said quietly. A few people heard it. Enough to make the words travel, enough to make them uncomfortable. But still, no one spoke. While Cole exhaled through his nose, the patience he had been pretending to hold finally slipped. "Turn around," he repeated. This time, there was steel in it. Alicia didn't argue again. Not because she agreed, because she understood something deeper. This wasn't about convincing him. This wasn't about being right. This was about surviving the moment without losing herself inside it. She turned, slowly, deliberately, facing away from him. Her hands remained at her sides for half a second longer. Then, she placed them behind her back. Not in submission, in control. The ballroom seemed to shrink. 300 people, and every one of them watching now. No more pretending, no more looking away. This was happening, right here, in the open. Cole reached forward. The metal cuffs slid into his grip with a soft, familiar sound. He didn't rush, didn't hesitate. The first cuff closed around her wrist with a sharp click. Alicia felt it instantly, cold, unforgiving, real. The pressure pressed directly against the delicate chain of her bracelet, forcing the gold into her skin. A small, tight pain flared, not enough to make her flinch, but enough to remind her of what it was, of what it meant. Her fingers tightened once, just once, then stilled. The second cuff snapped into place, louder, final. The sound echoed across the room, sharper now in the full silence. Somewhere in the crowd, someone inhaled sharply. Another person whispered something under their breath. But no one stepped forward. Not now. Not after it was done. Cole adjusted his grip on her wrists, turning her slightly to face the room again. Not gently, not violently, just firmly, like positioning something or someone. Alicia lifted her head. Her eyes scanned the room. Faces, so many faces. Some curious, some uncomfortable, some approving. One woman near the front, pearls around her neck, champagne glass in hand, nodded slightly. "Well," she said to no one in particular, her voice carrying just enough. "At least someone is taking security seriously." A few people murmured in agreement. Alicia heard it, felt it, but didn't respond, because that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was everything else. The people who said nothing, the ones who knew better, the ones who saw the truth, and chose quiet anyway. Across the room, Maya's phone remained steady in her hands, recording everything. Her heart was beating faster now, but her grip didn't shake. She wasn't just watching anymore. She was documenting. Ray stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. His hands clenched at his sides, jaw tight, eyes locked on Alicia. "That's my girl," he muttered under his breath. A younger cook beside him grabbed his arm. "Chef, don't," he whispered urgently. "You go out there, he'll take you too." Ray didn't move, didn't blink. Every instinct in him screamed to step forward, to say something, to do something. But experience, years of it, held him in place. The same lesson, over and over again. Not here, not like this, not against someone like him. Back on the floor, Cole began guiding Alicia toward the service hallway. His hand rested at her arm, firm and directing, possessive. Alicia walked, not dragged, not stumbling, walking, each step measured, each movement controlled. She wouldn't give them anything else. Not fear, not panic, not even anger, because those things, those were the reactions they expected, the reactions that made this make sense in their minds. She kept her back straight. Her chin lifted. The cuffs shifted slightly with each step, the metal pressing harder against the bracelet. The gold chain dug into her skin again, a thin line of red forming beneath it. Her mother's bracelet, pinned, trapped, but still there. At the edge of the crowd, the woman who had seen the phone earlier stared again. Her eyes moved from Alicia's wrists, to the bracelet, to her face. Something was forming, something connecting, but not fast enough. Not yet. The service hallway door loomed ahead, plain, unremarkable, a boundary between two worlds. Behind them, light, music, polished surfaces. Ahead, cold walls, harsh light, no audience. Cole pushed the door open. Alicia stepped through. The temperature dropped immediately. The air felt different, real, unforgiving. The door swung shut behind them with a soft, hollow click. The music vanished. The voices disappeared. Only the hum of fluorescent lights remained. Cole stopped. "Turn around," he said again. Alicia faced him, her wrists still bound behind her back, her expression unchanged. "You understand what happens next?" he asked. Alicia looked at him, not defiant, not afraid, just steady. I understand you're making a mistake, she said. For the first time, he hesitated. Just for a second. Then his jaw tightened again. No, he said. You're just starting to understand yours. Outside the hallway, the room held its breath. Inside, the line had already been crossed, and there was no going back. The hallway felt smaller than it was, not because of the walls or the low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, but because of what had just happened in the ballroom behind them. The air still carried it. That moment, that silence, that choice. Alicia stood where Cole had positioned her, wrists bound behind her back, shoulders steady, breathing controlled. The sting at her wrist hadn't faded. If anything, it had settled in deeper. The thin gold bracelet pressed between bone and metal, caught under the edge of the cuff. Each subtle movement reminded her it was there. Something fragile forced into something hard. She didn't look down, didn't acknowledge it, because she wouldn't give him that. Cole took a step back, studying her again like she was a problem he hadn't fully solved yet. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said. Alicia met his eyes. I'm not the one escalating this, she replied. Her voice was calm, not challenging, but clear enough to carry weight. The younger officer stood off to the side, near the wall, his posture tight, uncertain. His hands hovered near his radio, then dropped again. He had heard everything, seen everything, and now he stood in the space between action and consequence, not sure which one he was supposed to choose. From the ballroom side, the door cracked open slightly. A sliver of warm light cut across the gray hallway floor. A few figures gathered there, guests who had followed, drawn not by concern, but by curiosity. One of them was the woman with the pearls, Diane Prescott. Her silhouette appeared first, framed by chandelier light, champagne glass still in hand. She leaned slightly into the doorway, just enough to see inside. Well, she said lightly, her voice carrying with practiced ease, I'm glad someone's taking this seriously. A murmur of agreement followed behind her. Alicia didn't turn her head, didn't look, but she heard it, felt it settle, another layer, another weight. The younger officer shifted again. Ma'am, you can't, he started. Diane waved him off with a small flick of her hand. Oh, please, she said. If this were nothing, we wouldn't be here, would we? No one corrected her. No one said what they all knew, that this had nothing to do with anything real, only with what had been decided. Cole didn't respond to her either, but he didn't ask her to leave. That silence was its own answer. Alicia closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them again. Still steady, still present, still herself. Behind Diane, more faces gathered. The doorway filled with observers. The hallway became a stage, and Alicia, center, a subject of attention she had never asked for. Cole stepped forward again. We're going to do this properly now, he said. Alicia tilted her head slightly. What does properly mean to you? She asked. He ignored the question. Turn around. Face the wall. Alicia didn't move. Not yet. I've already complied, she said. You've searched my pockets. You haven't identified anything missing. There's no report. Cole's jaw tightened again. You're not in a position to debate procedure. I'm in a position to understand it, she replied. That did it. The thin edge of control he'd been holding onto slipped. Face the wall, he repeated. Louder now. The hallway went still. Even the murmurs behind Diane faded. Alicia turned, slowly, deliberately. Her shoulder brushed lightly against the wall as she faced it, the cold surface pressing through the thin fabric of her uniform. Her hands remained behind her. The cuffs shifted again. The bracelet pressed deeper. She inhaled, exhaled. Cole stepped closer. His presence filled the space behind her. "You think you're smarter than this?" he said, low enough that only she could hear. Alicia didn't answer. "You think knowing a few words changes anything?" he continued. Still nothing. Because she knew. He wasn't asking, he was justifying. To himself, to the room, to the silence. Behind them, Maya moved closer to the doorway. Her phone steady now, focused. The frame captured everything. The cuffs, the posture, the distance between power and restraint. She wasn't hiding it anymore. Not completely. Someone beside her noticed. "Are you recording this?" a man whispered. Maya didn't look at him. "Yes," she said. He frowned. "That's not—" "It is," she replied quietly. And she kept filming. Back in the hallway, Cole stepped away again. Not satisfied, not finished. Because there was nothing to find. And that was the problem. He needed something, anything, to justify what had already been done. The younger officer cleared his throat. "Sir," he said carefully, "there's still no confirmation on any missing item. I checked with the front." "I didn't ask for confirmation," Cole snapped. The officer fell silent. The words hung in the air. Sharp, unmistakable. Alicia heard them, so did everyone else. There it was, no longer hidden. This wasn't about evidence. This wasn't about safety. This was about control, about perception, about deciding who belonged and who didn't. Diane smiled faintly in the doorway, as if the entire scene confirmed something she had already believed. Alicia turned her head slightly. Not fully, just enough. Her eyes met Diane's for the briefest moment. And in that look, there was no anger, no pleading, just recognition, a quiet understanding, like she had seen that face before, in different rooms, on different people, the same expression, the same certainty, the same refusal to question anything that felt comfortable. Diane's smile faltered, just slightly, then returned, because comfort was easier than doubt. Alicia turned her gaze forward again, back to the wall, back to the stillness. Outside, the ballroom continued to breathe. Soft music, muted conversations, a world pretending nothing had changed. But inside this hallway, everything had, and the silence that had followed her here was no longer just absence. It was participation. Every person at that doorway, every person in that room, every person who had watched and said nothing. They weren't just witnesses. They were part of it now. And somewhere, deep beneath the noise and the lights and the polished surfaces, something was beginning to shift. Not loudly, not yet, but enough. Enough that the truth, the real truth, was getting closer to the surface, closer to being seen. The only question now was who would recognize it first. The answer didn't come from inside the hallway, not from the guests standing shoulder to shoulder at the doorway, not from the officer who knew something was wrong but couldn't bring himself to say it, and not from Captain Cole, who had already decided what this moment meant long before it ever happened. It came from something much smaller, much quieter, a soft vibration. Back in the ballroom, on the edge of table 4, Alicia's phone lit up again, face down, half hidden beside a folded napkin and a glass still sweating from untouched champagne. The screen glowed against the white linen. One word. Dad. It pulsed once, twice, Then again. A guest at the table noticed. The same woman who had seen it before. Her eyes drifted down, almost unconsciously, drawn by the movement. She stared. Not at the name itself, at the repetition, the insistence, the way it kept calling. Something unsettled in her chest. She looked toward the hallway, then back at the phone, then toward the stage. Her gaze landed on the empty VIP table again. J. Brooks. The name caught the light just like the bracelet had earlier. Sharp, clear, waiting. She frowned slightly. The pieces didn't fit yet, but they were close. Very close. Across the room, Maya noticed the same thing. Her eyes followed the woman's gaze. From the phone, to the placard, to the hallway. Her grip on her phone tightened. She didn't stop recording, didn't lower the frame, because whatever was coming, it was bigger than what had already happened. Outside the hotel, a black SUV rolled to a smooth stop beneath the covered entrance. No flashing lights. No noise. Just presence. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. The driver stepped out first, moving quickly to the rear door. He opened it with quiet precision. A man stepped out. Tall, composed, dressed in a dark suit that didn't try to impress, but did anyway. He adjusted his jacket once, a simple motion. But the way he did it, the ease, the certainty, shifted something in the air around him. The doorman straightened instinctively. "Good evening, sir," he said. The man nodded once. "Evening." His voice was calm, even, carrying a weight that didn't come from volume. He didn't pause, didn't look around. He walked forward, and people moved. Not because he told them to, because something about him made standing still feel like the wrong choice. Inside the ballroom, the energy shifted. Subtle, almost imperceptible, but real. A few heads turned toward the entrance. A whisper passed between two guests. "Who is that?" Another voice answered, lower. "I think that's—" They stopped themselves. Not sure. Not yet. Back in the hallway, Alicia stood facing the wall. Still, controlled. The cuffs hadn't moved. The pressure hadn't eased. But something else had changed. She felt it before she understood it. A shift. Faint. Like the air pulling in a different direction. Behind her, Cole was still talking. Still justifying. Still building something out of nothing. But his voice had lost its edge. Just slightly. Because somewhere in the room, attention was moving. Not away from Alicia, but toward something else. The younger officer noticed it first. He glanced toward the ballroom, toward the door, his posture straightened. "Sir," he said quietly. Cole didn't respond. Not right away, because he hadn't seen it yet, hadn't felt it. He was still inside the moment he had created, still holding control, or trying to. In the doorway, Diane shifted her weight, turning slightly as more movement caught her attention from behind. The crowd parted. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just enough. The same way it had for Alicia earlier. But this time, it wasn't avoidance. It was recognition. The man stepped through the ballroom with steady, unhurried steps. His shoes made a quiet sound against the polished floor. Measured. Even. Each step landing exactly where it needed to. The room responded without instruction. Conversations lowered, then stopped. Phones shifted. Eyes followed. Maya adjusted her angle slightly, capturing the movement as it unfolded. Her instincts sharpened. This was it. This was the moment. Near the stage, the event coordinator froze. Her clipboard slipped slightly in her hands. She looked from the man to the empty table, to the name on the placard, J. Brooks. Her lips parted. She read it again, then again, and this time it clicked. Her face drained of color. "No," she whispered. The clipboard slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud that no one heard, because the room had already gone silent. The man didn't stop, didn't slow. He walked straight through the center of the ballroom, toward the hallway, toward the place where everything had gone wrong. And still, inside that hallway, Captain Cole had no idea that the balance he thought he controlled was already shifting. No idea that the silence he relied on was about to break. And Alicia, standing there, wrists bound, back straight, eyes forward, felt it, not as hope, not as relief, but as something quieter, something deeper, the kind of change that doesn't announce itself until it's already too late to stop it. The hallway door opened. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough. But everything shifted. The fluorescent light didn't change. The cold air didn't warm. The cuffs still pressed into Alicia's wrists. And yet, something in the room gave way. Captain Cole didn't turn at first. He was still focused on Alicia, still holding on to the version of control he believed he had. "You're going to answer me," he said, his voice low, tight with irritation. "Or we're going to do this a different way." Alicia didn't respond. Her eyes remained forward, her breathing steady, because she felt it now. The shift, closer, behind him. Footsteps, measured, unhurried, each one landing with quiet certainty against the concrete floor. The younger officer turned first. His posture straightened instantly. His hand moved unconsciously toward his belt, then dropped again. His eyes widened. "Sir?" he started. Cole didn't listen, didn't turn. Not yet, because the man behind him hadn't spoken. Not until he reached the center of the hallway. Not until he saw her. Alicia. Wrists bound, back straight, standing exactly where she had been left. The man stopped. For 1 second, everything froze. The hum of the lights, the shallow breaths in the doorway, the quiet shuffle of shoes behind Diane. All of it held still, because something had just entered the room, and everyone felt it. Alicia turned her head, just slightly, and their eyes met. No surprise, no shock, just recognition. "Hi," she said softly. A single word, simple, familiar. It didn't match the scene, didn't match the cuffs, didn't match anything about what was happening. And that was what broke it. Captain Cole turned. Slowly, almost reluctantly, like his body understood something before his mind caught up. His eyes landed on the man. Took him in, the suit, the stance, the presence, then the pin, small, metal, subtle but unmistakable. The color drained from Cole's face in stages, not all at once. First confusion, then realization, then something deeper, something colder. "Take those off," the man said. 7 words. Not loud, not shouted, but absolute. They landed in the hallway with more force than anything that had come before. Even the cuffs, even the accusations, because these words didn't ask, they didn't argue, they ended things. Cole didn't move, not immediately. His mouth opened slightly, closed again. "Sir," he started, "take them off." The same words, slightly sharper, still calm. But now, there was no room left for anything else. The younger officer stepped back instinctively. Diane froze in the doorway, her champagne glass lowering just a fraction. The crowd behind her shifted, uncertainty rippling through them like something had just cracked beneath their feet. Cole's hand moved, but it wasn't steady anymore. He reached for the keys at his belt, missed them the first time. His fingers fumbled, tried again. The small metallic jingle echoed too loudly in the silence. Alicia didn't move, didn't turn fully. She stood exactly as she had been, letting it happen, letting him undo what he had done. The first cuff opened, a soft click, the pressure released slightly, then the second. The metal fell away. Alicia brought her hands forward slowly, carefully, as if the moment itself might break if she moved too fast. Her right hand reached her left wrist, gently. She touched the bracelet. The thin gold chain had left a faint red mark against her skin. A small line, delicate, but visible. She pressed her thumb lightly against it, then lowered her hand. Only then did she look fully at the man in front of her. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken again, but his eyes had changed. Not anger, not yet. Something deeper, something controlled. The kind of restraint that comes before something much larger. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Alicia shook her head. "No." A pause, then, "I'm okay." He studied her for a moment longer. Not as an officer, not as authority, as something else entirely. Then he turned, slowly, deliberately, to face Captain Cole. And in that turn, the entire room shifted again, because now everyone knew, or at least they felt it. Cole stood frozen, the keys still in his hand, his voice, when it came, barely held together. "Commissioner, this is a misunderstanding. There was a report. I was just following." "Stop," one word. Clean, precise. Cole stopped, immediately. "Explain to me," the man said, his voice still even, "what probable cause you had to detain her." The words hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. Cole swallowed. "There was a missing item. Where is the report?" Silence. Cole's mouth opened, closed. Where is the report?" the man repeated. Same tone, same calm, but now it cut deeper. Cole looked at the younger officer, then back. There was verbal confirmation. From who? No answer. The hallway held its breath. Diane shifted away, her confidence beginning to crack. Maya's phone remained steady, capturing every second. The younger officer stepped forward, just slightly, his voice quiet, but clear. "There was no report, sir." The words landed, hard, final. Cole's head snapped toward him, but it was too late, because now the silence had broken, and everything that had been hidden inside it was starting to come out. The silence didn't return. It couldn't. Not after that. Not after the words had been spoken out loud, clear, undeniable, impossible to pull back into the comfort of doubt. "There was no report, sir." The younger officer stood there, his voice still echoing faintly in the hallway, as if even he hadn't fully believed he would say it. Captain Cole turned toward him sharply. "You don't," he started. "Enough." The commissioner didn't raise his voice, but it cut through everything. Cole stopped. Again. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. The authority in the room had shifted, not gradually, not subtly, completely. The commissioner stepped forward. One measured step, then another, closing the distance between himself and Cole until there was nowhere left to hide inside posture or rank. Let's be very clear, he said. His voice was calm, but now it carried weight, the kind that didn't need volume to fill a room. You detained a credentialed staff member, without a report, without a witness, and without probable cause. Each phrase landed like a marker, one after the other, building something that could no longer be undone. Cole swallowed. There was suspicion. Based on what? No hesitation, no delay. Cole hesitated. And that was everything. Because for the first time that night, he didn't have an answer ready. The room felt it. The guests in the doorway leaned in slightly, no longer pretending this was routine. This wasn't security. This was exposure. Cole's eyes flicked briefly toward Alicia, then back. She was moving through restricted areas, he said. Alicia didn't react, didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. The lie didn't hold. Not here. Not anymore. The commissioner turned his head slightly. Were you in any restricted area? He asked her. No, Alicia said. Simple, direct, true. The younger officer spoke again, quieter this time. She wasn't, sir. I've been watching the floor. She stayed within service routes. Cole's jaw tightened. The ground beneath him was shifting fast now. Too fast. The commissioner nodded once, then turned again, this time toward the doorway, toward the witnesses. Did anyone here file a report of missing property? He asked. The question hung, heavy, unavoidable. Diane shifted. Her fingers tightened slightly around her glass. I heard there was, she began. Did you file a report? The commissioner asked. She hesitated. No. Did anyone here file a report? Silence. Not the same silence as before. This one felt different, exposed, uncomfortable. A man near the back shook his head. Another woman looked down. No one stepped forward. No one claimed it. Because there was nothing to claim. The commissioner let the silence sit for a moment. Then he turned back to Cole. So, he said quietly, there is no report. Cole opened his mouth, closed it. His breathing had changed now, shallower, faster, because he knew. He knew exactly what this moment meant. The commissioner stepped closer, not aggressively, not threatening, but final. You fabricated a situation, he said. You bypassed protocol, and you restrained a civilian without cause. Each word landed harder than the last. Around them, phones were raised higher now. No one was hiding it anymore. Maya adjusted her angle slightly, her heart pounding as she kept recording. This wasn't just a moment. This was evidence. The younger officer straightened. His voice shook, but only slightly. Sir, he told me to run a background check. Said, he hesitated. The commissioner didn't look away from Cole. Finish that sentence, he said. The officer swallowed. He said to find a reason to remove her. The hallway seemed to shrink again. But this time, it wasn't Alicia at the center of it. It was Cole. All eyes turned, all attention shifted, from suspect to source. Cole's head snapped toward the officer. That's not what Is that not what you said? The question came from the commissioner. Sharp, precise. Cole froze, because there was no version of that sentence he could reshape now. Not with witnesses, not with recording, not with truth already in the air. The commissioner exhaled slowly, then spoke. Captain Ryan Cole, he said, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. The words didn't need to be loud. They carried anyway. They always did. Cole's face went still. Not shocked, not yet. Just empty. like something had just been removed from him without warning. "You will surrender your badge and your service weapon," the commissioner continued, "and report to Internal Affairs first thing in the morning." No anger, no raised voice, just procedure. The very thing Cole had ignored, now being applied to him. The room held still, waiting, watching. Cole's hand moved, slowly, toward his chest. His fingers touched the edge of his badge for a moment. Just a moment, he hesitated. 24 years, authority, identity, everything he believed he was. Then, he unclipped it. The small metallic sound echoed softly in the hallway. He placed it in the younger officer's hand. Then his weapon. The transfer was quiet, but it meant everything, because in that moment, the system had turned. Not outward, inward, toward itself. Alicia stood still, watching, not with satisfaction, not with triumph, just clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about truth, being seen, finally. The commissioner turned back to her. The shift was immediate. The tension softened. Not gone, but different. "Are you all right?" he asked again. Alicia nodded. "I am." He glanced at her wrist, at the faint red mark where the cuff had pressed against the bracelet. Something flickered in his eyes, brief, controlled, but real. Then he looked back at her, and for the first time since entering the hallway, his voice changed, just slightly. "You handled that well," he said. Alicia's lips pressed together for a moment. Not quite a smile, but close. "I've had practice," she replied. The words carried more than they said. He understood, because he knew exactly what she meant. Behind them, the room began to breathe again. Not comfortably, not like before, but differently. Because now, they had seen it. Not just what happened, but what it meant. And they couldn't unsee it. The hallway didn't empty right away. No one rushed out. No one spoke over what had just happened. They lingered, caught in that strange space between witnessing something and understanding it. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a pale glow over faces that looked different now. Less certain, less comfortable, more aware. Alicia stood at the center of it all, her hands free, her posture still straight, her breathing steady. But something had shifted. Not just in the room, in her. She flexed her fingers once, slowly, then again. The faint imprint of the cuffs still marked her skin, a thin red line pressed into her wrist where metal had met flesh. Her eyes dropped for just a second. To the bracelet. The gold chain rested where it always had. Delicate, unbroken, but no longer hidden. It caught the light again, but this time it wasn't trapped beneath steel. It was visible, clear, unmistakable. Alicia touched it lightly, just the tips of her fingers, then lowered her hand. Behind her the murmurs began, soft at first, then growing. Not loud, but enough. Enough to carry. I didn't realize. He just did that? In front of everyone? Voices that had been silent minutes ago were finding their way back. Carefully, cautiously, trying to make sense of what they had chosen not to stop. Near the doorway, Diane Prescott stepped back. Her posture had changed. Not by much, but enough. Her shoulders weren't as relaxed. Her expression wasn't as certain. She glanced once toward Alicia, then away, because now she understood, and that understanding didn't feel good. Maya lowered her phone slowly, not because she was done recording, but because she didn't need to hide it anymore. The truth had already been seen, already captured, already real. She took a breath, then stepped forward. Not into the center, not into the spotlight. Just closer, close enough to be present, close enough to stand where she hadn't stood before. On the other side of silence, the commissioner turned slightly, his gaze moving across the room. Not searching, not questioning, just observing, taking in everything, the witnesses, the reactions, the shift. Then he looked back at Alicia. "You didn't call," he said quietly. It wasn't an accusation, not even a question, just a statement. Alicia met his eyes. "I could have," she said. A pause. "But I didn't want to." He studied her for a long moment. "You knew I'd come," he said. Alicia shook her head slightly. "No," she replied. "I knew I shouldn't need you to." The words settled deeper than anything else that night. Because they weren't about him. They weren't about power. They were about something bigger. Something that had been broken long before tonight. The commissioner exhaled slowly, a faint nod. Not agreement, not disagreement, understanding. He stepped closer, his voice softer now. "You shouldn't," he said. Alicia held his gaze, then, very quietly, "That's the point." Behind them, the ballroom had started to shift again. But this time, it wasn't returning to normal. It couldn't. Not after what they had seen. Not after what they had chosen not to stop. The illusion had cracked, and no amount of music or polite conversation could seal it back together. Ray stepped out from the kitchen doorway, slowly, carefully, like he was crossing a line he had held himself behind for too long. His eyes locked on Alicia. "Baby girl," he said under his breath. Alicia turned toward him, and for the first time that night, her expression softened. Just a little. "I'm okay," she said. Ray nodded, once, but his jaw tightened. Because okay didn't erase what had happened, didn't undo it, didn't make it right. But it was something. It was enough, for now. The commissioner turned back toward the hallway exit. "Let's move this back out," he said. Not a command, a direction. The crowd parted again, but differently this time. Not to avoid, not to distance, to make space, to see. Alicia stepped forward. No cuffs, no restraint. Just her. Walking back into the ballroom, the same people. But nothing was the same. The chandeliers still shone, the music still played. But the air had changed. Heavier, more honest, more aware. 300 people watched her again. But this time, they saw her. Not as staff, not as background, not as something to overlook. As a person, as someone who had stood in front of all of them and didn't break, didn't shout, didn't run. She just stood. And that was what stayed. Near the stage, the empty VIP table waited. J. Brooks, still gleaming under the lights. The commissioner glanced at it once, then back at the room, then at Alicia. And in that moment, the final piece settled into place. Not announced, not declared, just understood by everyone who had been paying attention. Alicia walked past the table, didn't stop, didn't look at it. Because she didn't need to. The truth didn't belong to the room. It belonged to her. Later, after the guests had begun to leave, after the noise had softened into something quieter, after the weight of the night had started to settle, Alicia found herself outside the hotel. The city air was cooler now, cleaner, real. She stood near the curb, her bag slung over her shoulder, the glow of streetlights reflecting off damp pavement. A bus pulled up across the street, its doors hissing open. A child dropped a small stack of books near the stop. They scattered across the sidewalk. Alicia crossed without thinking. Kneeling down, she gathered them carefully, brushing off the edges before handing them back. "Here you go," she said. The child smiled. "Thank you." Alicia returned the smile. "Be careful," she said gently. The bus doors closed. The city moved. And for a moment, everything felt normal, simple, right. She straightened, adjusting the strap of her bag. Her fingers brushed the bracelet again. Still there, still hers, unchanged. Behind her, the hotel lights glowed, a reminder of what had happened, of what had been revealed, of what couldn't be undone. Alicia took a breath, then another, and stepped forward, not as a victim, not as a headline, but as herself, because in the end, it wasn't the room that defined her. It wasn't the silence. It wasn't the cuffs. It was what she carried through all of it, and what she chose to do after. Somewhere behind her, voices still talked about what had happened. Some would forget, some would learn, some would change, and some wouldn't. But one thing was certain, they had seen it, and they couldn't pretend they hadn't. Because once the truth steps into the light, it doesn't go back into the shadows, and neither does the person who brought it there. When Alicia Brooks stood in that cold hallway, her wrists marked but her voice steady, she didn't fight to win. She stood so the truth couldn't be ignored. And sometimes, that quiet strength is louder than anything else in the room, because the real cost of prejudice isn't just what it does to one person. It's what it reveals about everyone who stayed silent. And the hardest lesson isn't for the one who was judged. It's for the ones who chose not to speak. So next time you see someone being treated unfairly, don't wait for someone powerful to walk in and fix it. Say something, even one sentence, because Alicia shouldn't have had to stand alone for that long. If this story stayed with you, comment 1 below. If you've ever seen something like this and didn't know what to do, comment 0. And tell me, what would you have done if you were in that room? There's another story coming up, one that might hit even closer to home.